The 1980 to 85 Bustleback or Slantback Seville is certainly one of the most recognizable Cadillacs in history and also one of the most controversial. Conceived in the late 1970s after the success of the first generation Seville, which came out in 1976, Cadillac Division wanted a vehicle that would look significantly different from everything else on the road. The first generation Seville was so successful that many different companies and divisions within General Motors had copied the design, particularly its vertical D-line in the rear, as well as its sheer surfaces. For its next generation Seville, Cadillac wanted something different and unique that would be unmistakably a Cadillac. The result was a permutation of a design that Cadillac chief designer Wayne Kady had been working on since the late 60s. Originally conceived as a two-door with more rounded surfaces, Cadillac Division turned down a proposal for a Bustleback design for its Eldorado. But when Bill Mitchell subsequently proposed to use the design on a Seville, Cadillac accepted that it would investigate looking into it. The result was the car that we now know as the Slantback or Bustleback, and it did morph significantly from Wayne's original vision with more rounded surfaces. More specifically, Bill Mitchell, then GM's vice president of styling, asked Wayne and the team to tighten up the car overall and give it more creased surfaces, similar to a Hooper-bodied Rolls-Royce. Thus, the Bustleback Seville was born of Wayne's original concept sketches, combined with the Rolls-Royce flair to deliver the 1980 Seville. Unfortunately, no matter what you think of the design, the underlying mechanicals of the car, outside of the 1980 model year, were unfortunately relatively unreliable between the V8 6.4 engine in 1981 and the HT 4100 in 1982 to 85. But that's a story for a different day. Let's listen in as we invite former Cadillac chief designer Wayne Kady back to the program, the person who conceived of, designed, and executed the 1980 to 85 Bustleback Seville.
Well, welcome back to Rare Classic Cars, here with Wayne Kady, Cadillac exterior design chief from 1974 through the 1989 model year. And we're going to talk about Wayne's baby here, the Bustleback Seville, the 1980 to 85, right, Wayne?
Well, I was chief designer for it. I've had a lot of babies.
So
this is probably the most controversial one.
This is the so before we get started, I'll just say to the viewers, just think about this. Remember, Wayne, if you heard him, he bleeds, right? We've heard the criticism. He and I both own one, so.
I have many scars, but I managed to survive.
You managed to survive, right? And lead Cadillac Studio for another decade after that.
Right.
So, it's a controversial car, but I think one that you have been working on for quite some time. So maybe tell the viewers about how long you've been working on this, and we can go through some of your sketch work here too on it.
Well, the design actually, I started out thinking not as a four-door, but as a two-door, as an Eldorado. And these are Eldorado proposals. What I was really looking at was mainly the rear end of the car. Harley Earl used to say that the front was the most important part of the car, and it might be, but I think you spend a lot of time at a intersection waiting for a light to change, and you're looking at the rear end of another car in front of you or next to you. So I just felt that the rear end of the car was really an opportunity to get a really distinctive look, and that's what I was trying to do. And originally I was doing that with the Eldorado in mind and not really the Seville. But how we ended up it being a Seville design was that we were looking at the Eldorado design for 1979, and we were showing a full-size clay model to Cadillac Division, and Cadillac Division refused it as a Eldorado. And Mitchell wanted to be at the meeting because he wanted to talk to the people at Cadillac, the general manager, the sales manager, and so forth. And when they rejected it as an Eldorado, then he said, would you look at it as a Seville? And I don't know, he might have been thinking about that all along. and the general manager at the time, I think it was Ed Kennard, and Ed said, "Yeah, we would look at it." I think he might have said that just to
appease him a little bit.
Bill a little bit, but then he got it through, and that's really how that happened.
Interesting.
So we just put another door cut on it and made a few changes, and that's what became the
So this is an early version from what, 1966 here that you were working on as a two-door, and it's got some of the...
Well, it's not exactly. Maybe you can look at that as, you know, some seed of an idea, but that it might be a stretch to say it went from there to there.
I see.
And
this, by the way, seems to be in the color scheme of the 78 Eldorado Biarritz that ASC did a little bit.
yeah, except they had kind of a dark chocolate instead of the black.
Yes.
But it was that kind of a pattern, yeah, off the roof, half roof, and of course we didn't have a vinyl top then. And the latest one with ASC had the vinyl top. By then they were getting into these heavy padded tops, and they would have the big radiator caps, you know, to look like a pseudo Rolls Royce. They had straps on the trunks, and they were doing crazy things.
Maybe this one's starting to display some more of the, a little bit more of the theme there, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's more of the theme. This here was just a fun project, and it really, that was way before we thought of Seville as the area where we would put this design. And we were looking at V16 proposals back then when gas was very cheap, and it was just an exercise between major programs.
You could have fit probably a V32 under that hood, right?
Yeah, I could have put an Allison V12 or something.
Good dashed axle there.
We could have really blown the tires off of it. But you know, you got the side mounts, you know, the mirror.
Oh yeah, you do have the side mounts.
Yeah.
Wow. No, the dashed axle makes the Jag E-Type look...
Right. This is before front drive, too.
That's a radical one. And then you ended up, after that, was it this one, this kind of theme here?
This is kind of the... well, it wasn't the first design, but it was the first one that I really rendered and tried to make look like, you know, that add-on trunk. Well, I can't recall whether that one came first. These are probably in the same era. They're both watercolor paintings, so that's...
Now you have a really smooth area here, kind of a la Toronado-esque.
Right. Well, that's where I started with it. But Mitchell had other thoughts. When we got into the final car, I think he had seen probably the hooper-bodied Rolls Royces that all had hard lines. And he was into that hard line thing. He had us do that with a lot of our car lines.
And you have a much more creases in the. This is a watercolor that you did of yours, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. But much more creased up, if you will, especially in this C-pillar kind of area than your previous rendering.
Mm-hmm.
So that was his influence on the design then.
Well, this here, you know, as we got into the four-door, you know, we had to get a, you know, the proportions changed a little bit. I say, you know, we put another door cut on to make it a four-door off of the Eldorado proposal that they weren't buying. But we still had to make some modifications, so that might have been part of that.
And a couple interesting features too. Like you had, I remember in 1980, the 1 year only wire wheel covers.
Yeah.
Before this is the second generation wire wheel cover.
Yeah, that wire wheel cover was like kind of Ben-Hur, you know, it was stuck out, and it would. At the time when we designed it, it looked like it was going to be all right, but I guess we didn't take into account the high curbs, or I'm trying to remember whether it had something to do with going through car washes too. But the spokes would touch and they would loosen up and then they'd rattle, kind of like that grill thing I was telling you about. So then the next year I had to redesign those wheels. I think it was Norris Industries that made those wheels. and we figured out a way to reduce the offset. And then after that, I don't think we had any problems with it. We had three wheel cover, or we had a wheel cover design as standard. Then we had an aluminum wheel, which I thought really looked good with this car, but everybody wanted the wire wheel covers. That was the in thing back then, and so we have to accommodate them. You know, we're in the business to make money.
That's interesting.
We're in a business to make money.
I know it's. Can you say it one more time? It feels so good.
Any responsible designer has to understand that in order to earn their keep, they have to design cars that can sell.
You're far more practical in this dimension than I think some of your contemporaries were, which is you sketch cars with vinyl roofs, you have them with the wire wheel covers. Is that because you know that those are money makers and they sell, and maybe a bit against your own design personal preference? Or?
No, I had a mortgage on my house.
Because to your point, the aluminum wheel on this car, the turbine vane, that's a very handsome wheel. I mean, I'm sure I would love to find some, but I can't find any for mine.
I wouldn't mind having a set for mine too, but I mean, the car looks fine with these. It's just, you know, for people like you and I that are real car people,
yeah,
you know, we say, well, that's phony. Yeah, it's phony, but wheel covers are phony too.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another design for a wheel cover that happens to make more money, whereas the wheel cover is standard with the car.
I never thought about it that way, but it makes a lot of sense.
As it turns out, I don't remember seeing very many Sevilles or Eldorados with anything but wire wheel covers back then.
No, I think the base cover was pretty rare to see, as was the aluminum wheel option.
Right.
Which both were handsome.
Yes.
Too. The base wheel cover was actually a good-looking wheel cover. And then as the years went on, I think in 1980, this molding was not standard, correct? And then
we started out in 1980 without the molding, except on the Elegante version. And then the car did look odd. And the molding, I think, the molding tied it all together. It drew your eye all the way through the length of the car. And that's a nice line, too, on the car. And that accentuated that part of it.
What was the thought behind this kind of creased A-pillar? I always thought that was an interesting look on the car, and the roof has a crease that runs around above the drip rail.
That was part of Mitchell tightening everything up. You know, we had little radiuses here and there, and then he wanted it all tightened up, so we had like a radius, and he wanted it sharp. And I don't know whether he was influenced by that Hooper bodied rolls or not.
Now, you've also rendered this in your personal car. You have one major difference from the factory vehicle, and that's that you've inverted the color scheme on your Elegante and in this rendering.
I did.
So this is black over silver, but for whatever reason, they changed it in the second gen Seville from what was originally black over silver in the first gen to this. And any reason?
I don't recall, but you know, we had people at Cadillac and in-house that worked with colors, and you know, each car line has so many colors, and then if you want exclusive colors, like Cadillac might have 3 or 5 exclusive colors that the other divisions don't have, and then you'd have to share the base colors with other divisions. But I think I was involved in helping pick the colors, but why this is reversed, in the case of my car, or this car, which is an illustration of my car, it was cheaper to do it that way, and it just happened to look better, I thought.
So you're a finance guy at heart, I think, right? You have a little bit of that. But I'm curious, too, in terms of the design, this was one of the few Cadillacs that didn't have the vertical tail lamp treatment either. It's got the horizontal lamps.
No, but the 76.5 Seville did, too. It was horizontal, wrapped around the corner a little bit.
Yes.
It was kind of more of a blocky thing. So we had just taken a license to get it off.
Oh, interesting.
I'd looked at some with vertical taillights, but it didn't look right.
Was it because it was a smaller body, and it just made it?
No, it just didn't look right.
Just didn't look right. Huh. Interesting.
You have to take my word for it.
I think you're more qualified to evaluate art forms than I am, right? Because you have the vertical light theme here on this one.
Yes.
And
that's why I say we looked at it.
That's why you looked at it. It didn't look right. Well, let's take a look at some of your other work here, because some of these are, I think pretty amazing rendering. So, what was the thought on this one here?
Well, that originally came out in, that was probably the original proposal for the 60, after the 67 Eldorado was done. And we were looking at different concepts for the next generation of Eldorado. The Eldorado is so unique. If you're going to have another unique follow-up, what's it going to be? You can't have just another car that's, just a nice clean fin, the sharp edges.
Right.
It had to be unique and different. And that's what I was looking at here. It's just concepts. We do a lot of drawings, and we're searching for an idea. And we feed off each other too. Like I come up with an idea like this for the rear end, somebody else will do something that might work better for the front end, and you just feed off each other. You influence each other.
This is a side profile of this next one I'm going to show here, but this has a bit of the trunk theme
Right.
too.
Yes, it does.
Still an Eldorado. Still looks like a V16.
Right.
Thought process there. This one is really cool.
Well, they're all of the same car, but different views. You got the bevel hood going through, except turning down instead of going around this way. And the louvers.
Yeah.
And the bevel going through the windshield.
So that bevel was a kind of a theme, not only in the '67 Eldorado, but you're picking up on it here then?
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
This was before this. Yeah, this is before the 71.
Yeah, is May of '69, I think, on this one.
67.
67? Yeah, you're right,
7,
67, yep. And then we've got a few, these blow my mind, pencil sketches that I think you said you do in under an hour, which if you gave me an hour to do anything with a pencil, that would not look anything like that.
Well,
I got a few stick figures, and it would look like an 80s Volvo.
Well, it'd be kind of like me trying to add up or balance my checkbook.
Just sell more vinyl roofs and wire wheel
You can do it in
covers.
your head, but I can't. So everybody has a talent, and everybody has something to offer.
This other one, this red pencil sketch here, I think is this is a 4-door, is it not? This one looks like it's a 4-door.
No. Yeah, it might be. Well, it might just show the sectionist. Yeah, I guess it is. You're right.
And you've got another 4-door here, so you were actually thinking about this Seville as a 4-door at some point.
Yeah, probably.
You were waiting for them to say, "Gosh,
yeah.
don't do it as an Eldorado,"
Right.
because this one's a 4-door as well with the trunk. I never really noticed before, but the trunk on the 8085 has some of those lines of the 67 almost in it, with that crease down the center. And
Well, like Mitchell used to, when he was talking about high-end cars, he was talking about the creases being like the crease in your trousers. Like somebody is formally dressed,
yeah,
and their trousers are nicely creased. Nowadays, everything is pretty casual, but back then, if you can afford a car like that, usually you had a pretty high-paying job, and you had to wear a suit. And I remember when I first started work at General Motors, I had to wear a white shirt, and if you wore a sport coat, then you weren't really that. You should have a suit.
Oh, it had to be suit. Couldn't be a sport coat.
Well, it wasn't a rule, but you can look around. You can see how other people were dressed, and and the bosses were dressed. So you kind of got the hint.
Even when I started at GM, it was business casual attire, and it was interesting because I think everybody who was, an analyst or a manager was business casual, but the directors and the, executive director or vice president were not. So you kind of get the hint that maybe you should dress differently. Then I went into the auto parts space, and everybody was
overalls.
Yeah, overalls, casual, and if you went, because you didn't want to. Often you want to go visit the store and talk with the people, and if you came in wearing,
you're out of place.
You're out of place. They don't want to talk to you, and
it's amazing how all that changed.
Now this one evokes some memories of a competitive vehicle here, a little bit, a la Chrysler Corporation, maybe in the.
Well, maybe a little bit, and just the graphics in that one area coming off the roof. I think there's a little stiffer than that, but similar. That's the car, I kind of like that 81 Imperial as well. I guess I'm partial to Bustlebacks. Mm-hmm.
But the only thing about it on the rear end that I don't care for is the license plate frame treatment right in the middle of that form. I don't know if you could have done anything differently with it.
I have no idea how they came about.
And here's one last one here. So interesting. But this was a tough sale to management. And then what happened? I think we talked a little bit about the first Seville. The other General Motors divisions had been emulating it with the A body. Ford had the Granada. Chrysler has the R body. So why go in such a different direction? Was that they wanted something just different, or
Cadillac wanted something unique and different? And the more I thought about it, you had to do something that would really catch your eye and stand out, and it had to be so strong that if somebody copied it, you got credit for it.
Oh.
When I say you got credit for it, everybody would know where the idea came from, the original idea. So like Chrysler did a version that you just pointed out, and then I think Lincoln did another little version.
They did. They had the Continental, yeah.
But it was all around the rear of the car, the rear.
Yes.
So they were also focusing on the part of the car that would make it really stand out. And those are the parts that you really see. And even though they had, really good looking front ends, the part that you focus on is the part that's different.
Mm.
And two, if you're going to ask more money for this car, it ought to look like money. And like Mitchell said earlier, about if you're going to rob.
That's right.
And, maybe that's why he had me put the creases on the car. That if you're going to rob, don't rob from a neighborhood grocery store, rob from a bank.
Interesting.
And Rolls Royce or, high-end cars like that are probably cars that have they have a look of higher value knowing what they are.
Mm.
They have a presence, and Cadillac has always had a presence, or for the most part.
Yeah.
And when I say presence, it's kind of in your face. I have arrived. Maybe that's kind of a crude way to say it, but why do you buy a high-end car in the first place? Either it's high performance or it's aesthetically like a status symbol. And then when they talk about the Cadillac of this, the Cadillac of that, it has to have that kind of a value to it.
So did the dealers end up liking this? What was their thought? I mean, this is radical design, certainly.
Well, I went to the dealer the dealer reveal, which was in Long Beach, California. And they had it on a stage, and they had it. They had drapes, and when they unveiled the drapes open, and they had like a fog, and this car was coming out of a fog. And had a stand-up ovation. I mean, they stood for several minutes clapping for the car. I've never experienced that in all my career. I've been to many of these dealer reveals. I
Mm.
mean, they'd clap, they were happy, but this one was a standout as far as I remember from
Wow.
dealer acceptance.
And it was a standout from a styling standpoint, and you still shared quite a few components. I mean, right, the hoods with the Eldorado,
The hood was like the it's the same hood as the Eldorado, but this I had done on a Buick when I was in Buick.
okay.
But I used that for this car. And that was a way to disguise the hood.
So you took this idea from looks like a Riviera proposal.
I was in Buick, and then
You appropriated your own idea back. You took it back, huh?
I stole from myself.
Yeah. Oh.
Which is legal.
So that lasted for a few years, 80, 81 or something. They had that.
No, I think it was 1 year.
1 year?
Maybe the reason for that was to...
This one doesn't have it, but this was bigger in 1980
right,
in the top.
to camouflage the fact that we shared a hood. But then after, I think, a year, nobody knew anyway or cared. The car was so different that it didn't matter.
Interesting. And you shared the same glass with the Eldorado?
Same glass, same cowl, Eldorado, Tornado, and Riviera. And,
And it moved to front-wheel drive, moved to the Eldorado platform.
Front-wheel drive, it had four-wheel disc brakes, it had a lot of innovations. But all those innovations added to the cost of the car. And I think that to go from the 79 pricing to the 80 pricing, it jumped quite a bit.
Yeah, it went from about $16,500, I think, on the 79 to $20,500. And unfortunately, you alluded to this a little bit earlier, as part of that increased base price, you got the wonderful diesel engine standard.
That's correct.
So it went from a reliable Olds 350 fuel-injected gas V8, and then this started the era of Cadillac having all the powertrain challenges.
Right.
With the Olds diesel, then the V8 6.4, then the HT 4100, then the front-wheel drive transmission. Tough stretch for the next 5 years or so for Cadillac, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the diesel engine was pretty slow.
Yes, it was.
Cold climates, I think it had a glow plug that you had to wait to start it.
Yes, and it emitted that very luxurious clatter once you started it.
Yeah, like if it was electric, you wouldn't have to worry about the noise scaring or not the lack of noise scaring a pedestrian. Or surprising a pedestrian, I should say.
I had a 79 Seville diesel, the previous generation, and I remember I would pull up to the fuel pump and I'd have people run over and say, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You're at the wrong fuel pump, right?"
Mm-hmm.
It was putting in the diesel. Like, no, and then I'd start it up and they would chuckle and laugh. But that must have been a challenge for the Cadillac folks to go through that period, I'm guessing, too.
Yeah.
Did you, was this a Drew Hare interior on this car?
It was. Drew Hare was an excellent interior designer. He's really a nice man, too. I worked with Drew Hare for a number of years, and we really had a good working relationship, and I really had a lot of respect for all his design work. I think the interior of this car is spectacular. Even if you don't like the rear of the car, the interior's well worth buying the car for.
What do you like most about it?
It's I love the tufted leather interior. It just looks rich, and even though it's got fake wood on the panels, it's just a rich combination. Very, very elegant rear. Very elegant interior.
Has a lot of jewelry too. I think
Yes.
I counted on mine, and there's something like 14 Cadillac insignias between the seat backs, the steering wheel, on the
Yeah, but that wasn't even enough for some customers. Some customers actually put them around the door handles.
That's right. They put the little wreath.
Yes.
This also has on the exterior. You reminded me. This has the in the previous Gen Seville, there was an optional illuminated entry system that would cast light from the bottom of the door handle onto the lock cylinder. But this actually has illuminated lock cylinders as an option, I believe. So the actual lock cylinder itself illuminates.
Just the opening.
Yes. So quite a few interesting features.
It's kind of like an eye staring at you.
Yeah, it is kind of like an eye staring at you.
I wonder how much that cost.
Somehow it got through. I think you ruled with iron fist over these finance people. They didn't stand a chance. You know, I want my car the way that it is.
I don't remember calling for that. That's probably Cadillac marketing.
Oh, okay. To the marketing point, this car actually has the same trunk size as the previous gen as well, doesn't it?
About 14 cubic feet. The trunk space in this one here is a little. It's more vertical, whereas the other one is horizontal, but it's also flatter. So if you take that same area and stand it up, that's kind of how you get the same trunk volume.
Yeah. I love, well, take a look at your car. My favorite element of the trunk is they put the mouse fur on the hinges of the trunk. The trunk hinges are carpeted.
Oh, yeah.
The actual hinge is carpeted.
Okay.
So you can't just have the padded trunk and the nicely, you have to have it on the actual hinge.
Like you say, they're asking almost, a quarter more for the...
They were. The Eldorado was $16,500. The Seville was $20,500. So it's a lot.
Yeah, I remember watching people when this car was in the showroom with the other cars. They'd look at this car, they'd walk up and look at the price tag, and then go look at an Eldorado and then a DeVille.
I can see why.
Sure.
Well, thank you, Wayne.
And then I could say, well, I don't like that car, you know. That's why I bought it.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, this is not controversial at all. This is very plain vanilla. If you wanted to think of a plain vanilla car, there's nothing controversial here at all, right?
Not at all.
That's what you were going for, I'm sure.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Wayne. Thanks for sitting down and telling a bit about the story of the 80 to 85 Seville.
Always a pleasure, Adam.
Well, thanks so much. We'll go take a look at your personal one that you've rendered in watercolor.
All right.
All right. Thanks again for watching.
Thanks again for watching this video on the 1980 to 85 Seville, including an interview with Wayne Kady, its chief designer. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as that helps the YouTube algorithm serve this up to more viewers like you. And if you really liked it, hit the super thanks button, which is the heart-shaped icon with a $sign in it at the bottom right of your video browser. Until next time, check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and right, and stay tuned for a walk-around of Wayne's personal 1984 Seville. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, take care.